I'll come in whenever.
You'll be fine. I'm gonna play. I'm Trevor Farmer.
This is where you're saying it. Those parts of this part. You don't have to sing it. Just whatever you want to do. Jesus. Do they tell us when to start?
Oh, so.
sit down by the river, and with rapture old acquaintance renew. You'll know, yes, you'll know me in the morning by the smile that I wear. When I meet you in the morning, in the city that is built foursquare, in the city that is built foursquare.
You know, Dad wanted us to handle this for him, so we're going to do the best we can. If we shed a few tears, just bear with us. With both sorrow and gratitude, we announce the passing of Case Frederick Fred Patton. He peacefully entered his eternal home on February 16th, 2025, at the age of 83 years, 7 months, and 29 days. He was a devoted husband, father, grandfather, and friend. Fred's life was a testament to the unwavering faith, tireless work, and a love for family that knew no bounds. Fred was blessed to share 66 years of marriage with his beloved wife, Lucinda Ann, Lou Ann Patton, a partnership rooted in faith and dedication. Together they built a legacy of love and a strength that would carry on for generations. Through the years, they shared more than just a life together. They shared an unshakable faith that carried them through. Their relationship was built on trust, laughter, and the kind of love that only deepens with time. Even as the years passed and the world changed around them, Fred and Lou Ann remained constant hand in hand, hearts intertwined, always putting each other first. Dad was preceded in death by his parents, Wendell and Nuba Patton, siblings Elizabeth Smith, Eula Mae Tyree, Alpha Woods, Willetta Brock, and Raymond Patton. He also was preceded in death by a dear granddaughter, Amanda Robbins. Fred's faith was not just a part of his life. It was the foundation of everything he did. He lived with a singular mission, ensuring his family knew who Jesus Christ was and what he did at Calvary, that they could be saved. He found comfort in Scripture, strength in prayer, and peace in knowing that his true home was not on this earth, but in heaven. He never hesitated to share the gospel, leading by example in his steadfast devotion, whether through his words, his actions, or simply the way he loved his family. His greatest desire was for each of his loved ones to be saved and join him one day in a place called heaven, his eternal home. Fred Patton was a man who believed in honest work and earning your own way, not just for personal gain, but to provide for his family and leave behind something more meaningful than money. He never fled away from hard labor, taking on whatever job was needed to ensure his loved ones were cared for. He loved working with his family. Some of the work he included, he hauled watermelons with his brother Raymond in the scorching heat of summer. From there, he had a logging business where he logged boundaries of timber with his sons, Rick, Mark, Ronnie, and Robert. He would trade horses often under the glow of a barn light with his closest friend, Kenny Hampton, who would help him show the horses to buyers. And one of his last adventures was running Patton's livestock market with all his children and grandchildren, and he loved his grandchildren to be there with him. Dad worked with a sense of purpose and grit that was rare to find. He took pride in a job well done. He had a knack for turning nothing into something through sheer determination and ingenuity. His hands bore the marks of a life spent in motion, and his heart carried the satisfaction of knowing he had done his best every day to provide for his family. but his work ethic extended beyond physical labor. It was also about integrity, loyalty, and someone who would keep their word. If Fred told you he'd do something, you could count on it being done. If he made a deal, it was sealed with a handshake and a reputation that spoke for itself. He instilled those values in his children and his grandchildren, leading by example and proving that character was worth more than any amount of money. Fred's love for horses was more than a hobby. It was part of who he was. He had an undeniable eye for a good horse, and his ability to pick out a winner was unmatched. Whether in the barn, walking the pastures, or standing ringside, he found pure joy in the beauty and power of a well-trained horse. While Fred worked hard, he loved even harder. His greatest pride and joy were his family, who filled his life with laughter, love, and purpose. From his children to his great-great-grandchildren, he was a constant presence, a storyteller, a mentor, and a treat provider of Hershey's Kisses, which he loved to call his vitamins for his babies. Every visit they visited Papa Fred meant they was getting a Pepsi in one hand and a vitamin in the other, and they'd always give him a big hug when they left. Fred's love and influence will be carried on by his devoted family, his beloved wife, Lou Ann Patton, his children, Rick and Patton and Tammy, Star Robbins Kuziak and Walter, Wendy Fields and Mark, Ronnie Patton and Lucinda, Robert Patton and Rita Retta, Angie Patton, Penny Patton, Thorpe and Tony, 23 grandchildren, 26 great-grandchildren, 2 great-great-grandchildren, 2 brothers, Edward and Millard Patton, 1 sister, Judy Adams, along with a host of extended family and dear friends who will forever cherish his memory. Though our hearts are aching in his absence, we rejoice in knowing that Fred has completed his final race. His ultimate victory is won. He has now entered into the presence of the Lord he served so faithfully and greeted by loved ones who have gone on before. And if you'll bear with me just for a second. My dad was a guy who had simple words a lot of times. He would say, you got to put up hay when the sun shines. He would say, you got to hang right in there. That's how I got my start. And if any of you was looking for a job, he'd give you one. He'd pay you 26 cents an hour. And if you did a good job for him, he'd pay you 27 cents. So that was his high rate of the pay, but he would give you a job if you wanted one. One thing he told the girls, well, one of his granddaughters, and some of the other girls as well. And if you didn't shed too many tears today, just remember, every barn could use a few coats of paint. He was talking about makeup, so if your eyes shed tears, you just go back and replace it. We love you.
I have seen my last tomorrow, and I am holding my last breath. Goodbye, sweet world of sorrow. My new life begins with death. I am standing on a mountain, and I can hear the angels' songs. I am reaching over Jordan. Take my hand, Lord, lead me home. All my burdens are behind me, and I have prayed my final prayer. Now don't you cry over my body, for that ain't me. lying there. I am standing on a mountain, and I can hear the angel songs, and I am reaching over Jordan to take my hand. Lord, lead me home. Yes, I am standing on a mountain, and I can hear the angel songs, and I am reaching over Jordan. Take my hand, Lord, lead me home. Take my hand, Lord, lead me home.
Gonna try to get through this without crying. Johnny and June, Noah and Allie, Ronald and Nancy, Jack and Rose. When we think of great love stories, these are the names that often come to mind. Love that defied the odds, love that lasted through the years, love that was full of devotion. But today, I want to share a love story even greater than those. The love story of my grandparents. Fred and Luann Patton. For 66 years, they walked hand in hand through every joy, every hardship, every ordinary day in between. Their love was constant. They built a life together. 7 children, 23 grandchildren, 26 great-grandchildren, and 2 great-great-grandchildren. That's not just a marriage, that's a legacy. Papaw loved Mamaw with the kind of love that wasn't about grand gestures or fancy words. It was about showing up every single day. It was about a quiet, steady devotion. It was about making sure she was cared for, protected, and cherished. It was a love rooted in faith, strengthened by time, and unshaken by the changing world around them. Even after all these years, you never saw one without the other. They laughed together, they worked together, and they stood side by side through life's trials. They knew that love wasn't just something you feel. It's something that you choose every single day. And Papaw chose Mamaw over and over again without hesitation. He was a man of faith, of grit, of integrity. He believed in hard work. He believed in keeping your word and doing what's right even when no one was looking. But more than anything, he believed in family. To us, he wasn't just Papaw Fred. He was the man who greeted us with a Pepsi in one hand and a sweet treat in the other. He was the storyteller, the encourager, the quiet strength behind every family gathering. He loved us deeply, and he showed it in the way that only he could. But the greatest love he ever gave, the most important thing he ever taught us, was the way that he loved Mamaw. Their love was simple, yet profound. It wasn't about perfection. It was about commitment. It was about faith and family and forever. Now Papaw has gone ahead of us. He's finished the race. And while our hearts ache in his absence, we know this isn't the end of the story. His love is still here in every memory, in every lesson, and every embrace from Mamaw, who carries that love in her heart. Johnny and June, Noah and Allie, Ronald and Nancy, Jack and Rose, they had great love stories. But Fred and Luann, they had something even greater. They had a lifetime, and that is a love that never fades. Last Saturday night, as Mamaw sat by his bedside, she shared a poem with me. It was something that brought her comfort in those final moments, and I want to share it with you now. The poem is titled "Miss Me, But Let Me Go" by Christina Rossetti. When I come to the end of the road, and the sun has set for me, I want no rights in a gloom-filled room. Why cry for a soul set free? Miss me a little, but not for long, and not with your head bowed low. Remember the love that once we shared. Miss me, but let me go. For this is a journey we all must take, and each must go alone. It's all part of the master plan, a step on the road to home. When you are lonely and sick at heart, go to the friends that we know. Laugh at all the things we used to do. Miss me, but let me go. Papaw's journey here is complete, but his love remains. It is in the hands he held, the faith he lived, the family he built. He would not want us to sit in sorrow. He would want us to hold on to the laughter, the love, and the legacy he left behind. And though we miss him, we let him go, knowing we will see him again.
Softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling for you and for
a day. What a day it is of sorrow and rejoicing. As I stand here and look around, I feel gratitude for everyone who's shown their love and been here for us. I stand here with a handkerchief that's older than I am. That was my grandfather's, Wendell Patton. I've got a Bible that was my father's. And I've got a lifetime of memories that'll never be erased or can't be replaced. Sometimes I think there's no way my father loved me, or he couldn't have asked me to do such a thing. But he said he wanted us. And he was never easy to work for, so if you knew him, you'd understand. So here I am today at my father's funeral. It's hard to say that and hard to even imagine. But last night as we stood here for hours and hours, and people coming through and hugging us and showing their respects, and like I said, grateful is all I could feel. But so many of them talking about how my father's life had touched theirs and the things that it had meant to them. You know, he was a husband, a father. He was a grandfather. Yes, he was a logger. However, I never seen him log much. He more gave instruction. But he did have the skill set to do it if he wanted to. He was a horse trader. I have been with him on those journeys, not near as much as Kenny, but I have. But the greatest thing, he was a brother, a friend. He was a farmer. He was a Sunday school teacher. And if you ever sat through his Sunday school class, you would learn that his favorite book was the book of John. I don't know why John talks more about the love of Jesus and those, but it seems like I went through it 500 times. A lot of the others I never seen, but we would just go through John all the time. He loved the book of John, and there's nothing wrong with that. But his greatest thing was he was a man of God. And to us and to everyone, most people, they revere their father. And our father was a great man. I mean, he was a great man. He was not big in stature, a little bigger than me, thank God, but not big in stature just the same. But he was never one to back down from a challenge. 66 years with my mother. They challenged each other, I'm sure. So you can tell that was there. And he could bluff the baddest horse you ever seen. I don't know how he done it. And one time he brought a horse in. He could bluff a man too. We was at a horse sale. I'll tell this first. We was at a horse sale one time up at Lexington, and some man comes up to him and he said, I want to buy that horse. How much is it? And I can't remember exact numbers here. And Dad's like $700. And that fella said, I'll give you $600 or something. And Dad's like, nope, take $700 to buy it. And that guy said, well, I think you'll sell it for $6. And Dad said, for you, it just went up to $8. And that guy looked at Dad and he said, I may just whip you right here. And he was a big guy. And Dad said, brother, I've been looking for 50 years. I thought we was going to take one. But we didn't. We got out of there. So he could bluff people as well as horses. He brought one in one night, and we was out in the barn. You know, we stayed in the barn. We played ball, ping pong, rode horses. I mean, I couldn't tell you my childhood memories. But he brought a horse in, and he said, child broke. He had just bought it. Child broke. This horse anybody can ride. It was tearing the walls down when we was playing basketball. And the next day, my buddy was down there, and he's like, let's get that horse out and see if you can ride it. Let me tell you, the rodeo horses didn't have nothing on that one. It bucked up the road, down the road, and back up and back down. Finally, I jumped off. I'm like, this thing's crazy. And Dad comes home, and we tell him what happened. He comes over there, and he takes that horse out, and he says, get on him. You didn't have a choice. You can ask anybody. If he said get on him, you just got on him. And I got on that horse, and I'd ride it around. He had a string around the inside of his mouth. If that horse would start to buck, he'd just twitch that string. When Dad was done, you could ride it with a halter. In just about 20 minutes. He was a horseman. Man, was he a horseman. And some of the great exploits, I could go around this room and we could talk to each individual's life that he's touched. We wouldn't have time, and the Bowling Funeral Home may kick us out. But we could tell it. The kids that come and stayed summers with him and got to experience him and riding the horses. His love was for everyone. And the thing that, he had a life that was well lived. And that showed by everyone that was here. And when you have a life that's well lived, it don't mean that you just done everything you want it to do. It means you done for others as well. And you took care of others and you moved on things. For us adult kids, he was the hardest working man we ever knew. He worked most of our lives. He was gone a lot. They said, he hauled watermelons for a little bit. He didn't care much about that. But he did love to trade. It didn't matter if it was a pocket knife or a horse. It didn't matter. He'd sell your horse. If you claimed it, it was not yours if it was on the property. And except for his pets, Penny and Star, they got to keep theirs. But the rest of us, I'd come home with the greatest show horse in the world, and I'd come home and it'd just be gone. And I'd be like, Dad, what happened? And that's another story for another day. But he was the hardest working man, and he'd leave the house, and he'd get up and he'd leave early every day. He never hardly worked for anybody else. He worked for himself, self-employed his whole life. And he'd walk out through there, and he'd come across that little porch, and he'd step off the porch. Not to be gross, he'd step off the porch, spit, go to the barn, get his horses cleaned up and brushed, loaded in the trailer, and head out. We didn't have cell phones. He didn't know people. He'd be driving down the road and see a horse in the field and stop and say, hey, buddy, is that horse for sale? And that's how it was done. We met people in places where he said, stay down in the truck. He didn't want them to see that I was even in there. There was times we went places we couldn't get out, and the others could tell you these same things. And but man, he was great. For the grandchildren, he was the passer out of the vitamins, as you've heard, and Pepsi Colas. Sometimes to the dismay of the parents, especially Angie. Oh, dear Lord. You're going to rot their teeth out. We're Pattons. Our teeth rot out anyways. Don't worry about it. But, he wanted the vitamins, and he did pass those out to the kids. And I seen a picture the other day of Marsha's two twins, Wendy's grandkids. And they was probably 2 years old, and both of them had a Pepsi jug in it. And I was just like, yep, in the bottles and everything. That was my father. He was a great man, a great man. He told me a story. Now, we all talk about it, and we could talk about, like I said, all the stories. But he told me a story of his first horse. And he said he wanted a horse so bad, and his dad wouldn't let him have one. And he saved up his money working, and I'm talking about like a 10-year-old kid. He saved up his money working and went and bought a horse off someone, not broke, stud horse at that, wild as the Taliban. He brought that in, and his dad, Wendell, said, do not ride that horse under no circumstances. And he said every time Papa's truck would turn the corner, he'd get that horse out. He said a couple of weeks he had that horse broke. Said one Sunday they was there after church. Said he got that horse out of riding it up and down through there, showing off on it and showing them what it would do. And then Uncle Raymond said, let me ride him. And Dad let Ray get on the horse and take it for a spin. He rode it up and down through there. He had to show off a little too. I told you Ray was a show off like me. Couldn't help it. He come back and he was going to pull one of those Joe Cartwrights. He was just going to swing over the saddle. And he got his leg hooked. And the horse bucked him off and broke his arm or something, I can't remember. And Dad says that Ray never had to do nothing again. That Granny just petted him after that. How true that is, I don't know, but that's Dad's side of the story. There's always two sides. And with them boys, there was. He talked about how they was on the farm, and Ed and Dad and Russell, Bobby, all of them would go out catching the cows. When Papa wasn't home, of course. Hold them by the tail while somebody else got on it and tried to ride it. They were sort of a lot like us. They were free range. Our parents worked and we were just free range. We did whatever. But those stories are things that we can cling to. And they're things that nobody can ever take from us. And I've got some of them recorded that my wife recorded of him talking, and I won't tell all the stories. But I will tell a couple more. He had a friend that worked with us, Noah Osborne. And they was working on a job, and their dozer, the battery had went dead up on a mountain. So they came out and went and got lunch, and they had to get a battery. And they brought that battery back, and Dad's like, man, I dread carrying that up there. I don't want to carry it up there. And Noah, he was a stout man. He said, I can carry that up there with my teeth. And Dad said, if you can carry it up there with your teeth, you can have my week's pay. So he took a belt and strapped it around that battery and hooked it in his mouth and started carrying that battery up the hill. He got close to the top, and, times were tough. Dad knew he needed that money. And Noah was letting that battery rest on his chest a little. And Dad said, it can't touch it. And he said, Noah just stuck that chin out and kept on walking. And he didn't make that bet anymore. He got in trouble on that one. And I had a gentleman come through last night, a longtime friend and horse trader of Dad's. And he told me a story I hadn't heard. He said Dad come down there to his house one day, and he said, let's do a little trading, because I told you they just had to drive around. And most of them just swapped back and forth, swapped money, swapped the same horses. But he went down to Jack's, and Jack said, buddy, I'm busy. Just go in there and swap 2 out. So Dad went in there and swapped. Jack didn't even know which one he'd swapped for. He called Dad in a couple of days. He said, buddy, you burnt me up on that one. And Dad said, that's all right. You jerked my britches down the other day. So he must have burnt Dad, and he was just paying him back. So, but they were friends, and they were fun. And it's to listen to their tales is more than any. But I think they had a picture on the screen yesterday. I don't know if you all seen it. I think it was Dad and Willetta and Granny giving them the stink eye. Dad can make Granny so mad. And he would tell her a story that she ought to know that he was just making it up. But she would get mad enough to choke him. And he'd say, yeah, I can remember the day I was born. It was coming the awfulest storm ever was. And fire just boiled out of her, because she knew he couldn't. And that was the Pattons. They liked to pick and prod, and Ed would always stand on your foot and tell you to try to get away. And now I pick on everybody. So, hey, what can I say? There's one that don't. That's Ronnie. He don't like it either. But, that never stopped me. But I'll tell a couple on Dad, and then I want to get into the message. It's been, I don't know, time flies, but Dad was already sick, and Ed had been sick. And we took him to a rodeo. And Pattons, you got to know the Pattons. All the Patton men, they the same. But we take them to the rodeo, and we're walking in, and Dad's got his cane, or his horse that he called it. And Ed barely can walk. And we get in there, and there's all these stairs. Or there's an elevator. And we ask them, we're like, do y'all want to take the elevator? And they're like, shoot, we can race up them stairs. And Dad says, I can carry you up. And Rick said something about, this. Now, boys, you can't do that. But, man, that was funny. It was really funny. And in the last couple of weeks, or few, I don't know, it all runs together. I told him it was like Groundhog's Day. But when we was there with Dad, he had us all gathered around his bed. And we was gathered around. I don't remember who was there. I think Angie was over here, Wendy, me, and Rick. I don't know who was there. And we was gathered around, just like he asked. We're holding his hands. We're praying with him. We're crying, everything going on. And you'd have to know, in true Dad fashion, he looked Angie dead in the eyes. And he said, I don't think this is what I want. And we're like, well, Angie's like petting on him because, they're the nurturing kind. I'm just like, what the world? But they're looking at him, and she's like, what do you want? He said, I think I'd rather look at Luann. So we had to do a little switch out there, But that's true Fred Patton fashion if you ever known A lot of people don't know Dad was an inspirational speaker as well. He was good at it. He had an 8th grade education, but he was the smartest man I ever knew. And if you ever tried numbers with him, he could tell you right to the T where he tried it so much. And I never seen anybody that could remember numbers like that or remember horses like that. But he was the smartest man I ever knew, and he wanted to outwork everybody. And he liked to come to the logwoods, like I said, when we was dead, tired, wore out, the day was about over, and want to try to get on something and show you how it was done. And then if you couldn't do it, he'd say, "You want me to get your mama to do it?" Oh, that never sat well with me and Rick. Ronnie did okay with it, but me and Rick, that just never did work well. He was not the motivational speaker that I liked. No. But he did work hard, and he always got it done. And he always worked hard to take care of his family. He loved coon hunting. He loved a good coon dog. And there was a lot of times when we went trading. This is something Dad taught me. When you go trading, you don't have to have the best horse to come away with the best horse. But your horse better look better that day. That horse would be washed, it would be cleaned, and it would be clipped. And when it rode off that trailer, it looked like it was ready for the show if it was a bucking bronc. And he always kept them ready to go. And he never cared about fancy cars, trucks, things like that, but he wanted the best horse and the best coon dog. He didn't always have the best coon dog. We usually had some best horses, but not the best coon dog, but he loved them. And he's had some good ones. And as you could imagine, we are so proud to call him Dad, or call him husband, or brother, or whatever he was to you, maybe just friend. But it's easy to call someone proud who lived a legacy for God. All these things I told you are just stories to lighten the load and to let you know who he was if you didn't. But the biggest thing he ever done for me was tell me about Jesus Christ. And, to me, something that I thought about, Dad never hung up his spurs. Never. He kept telling me, when I get to feeling better, I'm going to come ride that horse. And I would have loved to seen him on chrome just one time. Because, boy, he was his kind of horse. He's good, full of fire. And when you get on him, you better hold on. But he was good, and Dad would have loved it. But he never got that chance. But I hope right now that we know there's horses in heaven. If you read your Bible, I hope Dad's helping tend them. And, that's all we can hope for. Because our hope was never planted on this life. This life is temporal. Dad was 83 years old. He's lived a good life. We're as blessed of a family as there is, and we're rich in heritage. I told you about Papa and my father, and you see the people's lives he touched. But that man who told the story about my dad burning him up on that horse is also the man that said Dad led him to the Lord. That he led him to the Lord and was the biggest influence ever in his life. That's what I like. That's what I like. But what I see is that Dad won the race. We're all on a race, and in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, it says, "Know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize? So run that ye may obtain. And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. But now they that do obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible crown." We will never go wrong living for the Lord. The things we do for God will never be forgotten. And no matter what you're doing for God, you're setting an example for those behind you. My father is here and he's going to the grave, but his legacy will not. His legacy will live on through me, and I will see him in heaven. His legacy will live on through my children, because I'm going to walk the walk that my father walked. And they better walk the walk that I walked, or they're in trouble. Because I want it to go on for generations and generations. Because our opportunity isn't here, but in heaven. And we have a chance to be together again. This does not have to be goodbye for a single person in this building. We can all meet again on the other side. But we got to hold on to the hem of the garment. Not just say we are. We got to hold on. And we got to serve God, because that's the only way of making heaven our home. I will tell you that this is probably the saddest day of my life, no doubt. And there will be things happen to me through the next weeks that will torture me. But I'll tell you what happened when my father lay there dying. When my father lay there dying in that bed, his family gathered around in circles, and I've got videos where we gathered around and we sang worship songs. We didn't just sit around and grieve. We sat around and sang worship songs because we knew that my father's journey had been won, that what he had been living for 50-something years had come to fruition. And we know that to be absent from the body, the Bible says, is to be present with the Lord. And at that moment right there, my father stepped into the presence of the Almighty God, and he won a victory that we're all still searching for. We're all still searching for. Let me tell you, to watch someone you love you love pass away is no easy thing. But it's a lot easier knowing that they're with Jesus than having doubt. I didn't have a doubt where my father was going. And I don't have a doubt that I plan on holding on and being with him, as I said. We did sing and have prayer. There was jokes, if you know the Patton family. Got you, Tammy. There was jokes. There was inappropriate jokes, not dirty jokes. Now, we don't do that in the Patton family. We better not. But there was jokes, there was laughter, and there was many, many stories told. And friends of his coming in, telling stories, and people who had traded horses with him or known him. And man, those were good. But our family has been blessed to have a godly father for 50-some years. And I don't throw around the word legacy lightly. But to me, my father was a living legacy. And his legacy will live on through us. We don't die, we just are separate for a little while. And some wonder how you can have peace in such a time as this. And all I can tell you is Jesus. Because when I woke up this morning, I had a peace over me. And everybody's asking, trying to see how I was, and I'm like, God's got this. This is in God's hands, not Robbie Patton's. Because I'm only flesh, just like all of you, but with God, all things are possible, and we know that. And he's everything to me my father has is where I want to gain, and that's where I want to be. The Bible talks about life is like a vapor. And I've had him 83 years, but man, or 54. He's been here 83. 54 years, but it seems quick. Let me tell you, it seems quick, and it don't matter. You're never ready to give him up. But there is no way I would bring him back. No way from where he's at and what he's gained. He earned it. He won the race, and he didn't cross the finish line on no stick course, I'll tell you that. He crossed it. It may be on bum. I don't know. That was our favorite. It may be on bum doing the high step across those gates. I don't know how he got there, but I know he got there. And I know you can tell we're proud of our dad. And his greatest achievements is always Jesus Christ. I didn't think I would tell this, but I guess I will. Later that night, after he said it for us to bring Mom in there, he had a good day that day. He called us that morning to come and pray with him. And we came and prayed with our father around his bed. Most of the time he couldn't hardly talk. And if he did, we called Wendy the interpreter. You had to read his lips. He just couldn't talk. I mean, the Parkinson's and everything, he just couldn't talk and didn't have the strength. He hadn't eaten in days. I mean, days and days. And we had prayer. And that day he set up, 2 or 3 times with us. He drank 3 Pepsis. I mean, hey, that's almost like heaven for him right there. And he drank 3 Pepsis. And we sat around, and then that evening he went downhill. And, I mean, he went downhill quick. And Dad was laying there, and we was gathered around again, all the kids. And when I tell you this, I want you to know that this is how real God is. My father's eyes, he's been sick, and the first thing that makes you look old is your eyes. They get a little murky around them, and they get a little foggy over them. But my father was laying there on his back, and he looked straight up. And his eyes come wide open because, he was sick, and he had been laying there, eyes half closed. And he looked straight up. And the whites of his eyes was as white as this paper. And the blues as crystal blue as water. I'm telling you the truth. And first he said, it's dark. And we was like, what? So Wendy went to turn the light on, because whatever Dad wanted, he got. So Wendy went to turn the light on, and then she realized that wasn't what it was about. And then he started telling us what he's seen. Oh, let me tell you, what he's seen was amazing. Some of them probably going to have to pray about. But I can't even remember all the things he's seen. But he said, I see a short, bald man. And they all started laughing because I was holding his hand. And I told them that those kids that made fun of Elisha in the Bible got killed by a bear, so they better watch it. And he wasn't talking about me because he was seeing into heaven. And he said, there's lots of them. He said, I see lots of women. I was like, and I knew he had made it. He said, I see these women from Maple Grove Church. I don't know that he's ever went there in his life, but he's seen them there. He said, I see children running everywhere. He said, they're leading me up to the gates. Tell me heaven ain't real. You're leaving this world, and God gives the family a moment like that. How can you doubt God? How can you doubt the legacy and what he done? Why was he blessed to be able to see that? I don't know. It may have been for us and not him. But let me tell you what, it was real as you sitting here today is real. And the life he lived for God was as real as anything I ever seen. He would take and give to people who didn't have and never expect back. I've seen things out of that man that I've never seen nobody else. Even if he didn't have it to give, he would give. And that's how we're to be as Christians. We're supposed to love like there is no other love, because the love of God is the greatest love there is in this world. And I'm going to tell you right now that there's no doubt that my father won his race, and he's on the other side. Because in Matthew 25 and 21 it says, he that endured to the end, the same shall be saved. Not that you get saved and then you walk away. You endure to the end. And it's a fight that we have to fight, and a battle that we go through on a daily basis. But let me tell you something. There was struggles that he had. There was things that came, and times when he didn't know how he was going to pay his bills. But he knew that the church house was the answer. He knew that God had him in his hand. And he knew that as long as he leaned on God, that everything would work out. And that's what I want to tell you today. If you don't leave here with nothing, leave here knowing that God is able.
Yes, he is.
God is able. And we have to endure to the end to receive the prize that he's received. Amen. God is good, ain't he? I know I'm long. I'm going to get done. I'm going to tell one more story. And this one's on me. I got a sister who likes to keep bringing up I'm the only one Dad ever had to physically correct. And it's not that I was bad. I was mostly misunderstood. But he took advantage of me a little bit. But we had a farm down the road where we live now, and we lived up at the forks of the road then. And granted, all these stories they tell on me, I was 5 and under through most of them. But my father was going to the farm, and we had a pony down there, and I wanted to go. And I said, I was standing out by the road begging him, please, Dad, please let me go. And he wouldn't let me go. And being a Patton, Dad backs out, and he starts taking off down the road, and I find the biggest rock I could find. And I throwed it, and I waylaid the side of that Ford truck. I made a dent. And Dad got out of that truck. He parked it right in the middle of the road. I was like, oh, Lord. And he come over there and he drug that belt out and he wore me out. He said, "You get to that house and you get there now." And I remember running and jumping up on that big tall porch, brother. It was a good whipping. I mean, I learned a lot from it. I did. But I made a dent in that truck. And Dad made a dent in our lives. If you're here today, you made some kind of dent in your lives. And you know, I'm an old Western guy. I'm still an old man to the core. Should have been born in the 1800s, I guess. But you know, it's something to be passed down. And when I think of it, my dad, like I told you, simple truck, bibbed overalls, button-up shirt, so he had his filing cabinet over here, papers falling out of it, and everything. I don't know how he kept up with anything. I know his taxes never was right, so don't come after us. But, you know, I liken Dad in my eyes to your Cochise, your Sitting Bulls, George Washingtons, your General Pattons. He was never famous like that, but in my eyes, he was just the same. In my eyes, he was just the same. He won't never be mentioned on no grand scale. This may be the biggest one here that he's ever mentioned on. But he was my dad, and he worked. But the biggest mark he ever made was the mark he left for Jesus. And I know I've talked about Jesus a lot, but we're going to be there someday, and we're going to have to see him. My dad was rich in love, rich in caring, and rich in friendship. If you're here today, we thank you from the bottom of our heart. And I believe if Dad could say something to you today, he'd say, "It's been worth it. Every battle I've gone through, every sacrifice I've made, everything I've given up has been worth it. If just one person comes to know God because of his walk." Because of his walk. For me, I've learned through this process that grief comes in waves. I told you we'll be laughing over something and then you'll hit a bottom. And I imagine it always will. But I will always have the peace of knowing where my Father stands. And the peace of knowing that he got to hear, "Enter in, my good and faithful servant. Well done." Amen. A word we all want to hear. "Enter in, my good and faithful servant." Death, where is your sting? There is no sting of death for those that know the Lord. There is no sting of death. But he said, "Enter in, thy good and faithful servant." I'm going to tell you, anyone that's here today, and my dad's last breath started his new life. And now he ain't got no stick horse, like I said. He ain't got no pains. He ain't got no worries. He's walking on streets of gold, and there's a mansion. Oh, there's a mansion. He may be sitting on a bench with Ray and Bobby Grimes and them, Papa telling the awfulest tales ever was. It's hard to say. But he's got a smile, and he's happy. And he's in a place we're all striving to get to. And if Dad could tell you anything, he'd tell you, whatever you do, make it right with Jesus and come be with me. Come be with me. Romans 10:13 says, "Whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved." I will tell you that we are not all right. My wife asks me all the time how I am. I could be dying of the flu, dragging a foot. I'll be like, "I'm right as rain." She'll be like, "No, you're not." I'll be like, "I'm right as rain." We are not all right. We're hurting. But we're all right through Jesus Christ. We're going to sing another song, and I'm going to challenge you right here. If you don't know the Lord, there is no wrong place or wrong time to know Jesus. You can pray at your seat, and you can ask God to come into your life, and he will more than oblige you. If he's tugging at your heart today, God is reaching for you and asking you to come. And we won't be separated, but for a little while. Go ahead and sing.
On a dark, stormy night on the Sea of Galilee, the disciples were so fearful from the rain. as he passed by. Oh, all along the dusty roadside, on his way to raise the dead, mighty were the crowds that followed, hungry for the living bread. I must touch him, cried a woman. I must touch him, or I'll die. So she reached and touched his garment as he passed by. Reach out and touch the Lord as he goes by. You'll find he's not too busy to answer your cry. He's passing by each moment. All your needs he will supply. Reach out and touch the Lord as he goes by. Oh, Matthew sat in worldly honor, taking taxes from all who came. Then one day the Lord passed by him, and he called him by his name. Come and follow me, he whispered. Do not wait or question why. So he arose and he followed Jesus as he passed by. Reach out and touch the Lord as he goes by. You'll find he's not too busy to answer your cry. He's passing by each moment. All your needs he will supply. And reach out and touch the Lord as he goes by. Oh, reach out and touch the Lord as he goes by. You'll find he's not too busy to answer your cry. He's passing by each moment. All your needs he will supply. And reach out and touch the Lord as he goes. Jesus is passing by each moment. All your needs he will supply. So reach out and touch the Lord as he goes by.
I've been living in this world quite a long time, always looking for a place to call my home. See, I've never been satisfied with what I saw here. Soon I'm moving to my brand new home. So this is an address change, no notification. lovely and new. There's a river that flows like crystal, walls and jasper too. The street in front of my house, it's made of purest gold. It's a place where we'll never grow. See, this is an address, change your location. Yeah, I'm moving to a much better place. There'll be no tears, no sorrow, there'll be no more pain. This is to tell you of my address change. What a day that will be when my Jesus I shall see. When I look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. When he takes me by the hand and leads me to the promised land. What a day, glorious day that will be. This is an address change notification. Yes, I'm moving to a much better place. There'll be no tears, sorrow, and be no more pain. So let me tell you of my address change. Let me tell you of my address change.
I can imagine what it would be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see. Your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Only imagine what day comes. If I find myself standing in the sun, I can only imagine when all I do is forever worship you. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah. I can only imagine when all I do is forever worship you. I can only imagine.